this movie takes place in the near future society in which you have this authoritarian government. Think something along the lines of the Hunger Games. And in this society, you have this family called the Van der Koys, led by Hilda Van der Koy, and they're basically the ones who are running everything. They're the authoritarian figures. And what this family decides to do to maintain power and influence over everyone in society is they annually have this big event called the culling. You know, they cull 2 random people in front of everybody to maintain power, make everybody fearful of them. And because this event serves no other purpose than to make the general populace fearful of their leadership, they usually pick vulnerable people, you know, elderly people, kids, people who can't fight back, people that it would have the most impact if they killed off. So what ends up happening actually is the main character and his younger sister, they're the 2 pledges who were chosen to be culled in front of everybody to set the example one year. She ends up dying and he ends up living. And under the influence of a trainer, you know, think the Karate Kid, he kind of pledges his entire life to a revenge tour against the Van der Koy family. So his entire goal is just to kill everybody. What I'll immediately start off by saying is this movie is tonally all over the place. It's the first thing you're going to notice when it starts. It has a bunch of really weird overlapping tones between comedy and very serious stuff. So you're going to spend the majority of this movie with a character named Boy, played by Bill Skarsgard, and he's a mute because he had his tongue cut out when he was a younger kid. So you really don't get to hear any dialogue from him. You just get to deal with this inner monologue he has, which is this conflicting personality of the voice of Archer and his younger sister who passed away.
That's me, facing televised execution by breakfast cereal mascots. Not my happiest day.
And for what it's worth, I think Bill Skarsgard does a really good job in this movie for what he's asked to do. I mean, the role's incredibly hard because he has no dialogue, so basically all of his acting is going to be through body language and facial expressions. And I'm on the record now as one of these people who thinks it's a very risky strategy from a director to take a big known charismatic actor like Bill Skarsgard and give them no lines. I mean, I know it fits the story, but it always seems like you kind of hamper your story a little bit whenever you take a big charismatic actor and you kind of just give them nothing to work with. But obviously it's central to the story, but it is a risk I just wanted to point out because that's something I immediately noticed is not going to work for a lot of people, especially if they're not familiar with the fact that he won't talk at all. And as I already said, if there's something about this movie that's kind of tonally off is that the comedy and the action don't always land, but something I noticed very early on about this movie is that it is definitely self-aware. Continuing the trend of 2024, I was not familiar at all with this movie. I knew nothing about it. I'm not familiar with any of the source material it might have inspired from, but it definitely feels like it has inspirations from a graphic novel, comic, a video game when you're watching it. And if you've ever seen the show Archer, you'll understand why, but there's a sarcastic undertone to basically everything in this movie because this guy's inner monologue, as I said, is a confrontation between the younger sister's like righteousness and the voice of Archer from that show, and he's kind of the same character.
Step 1, give myself an inner voice. I took the last one I remembered from this video game.
You have some of these scenes where a guy will like brutally murder another guy and he'll raise his hand and yell, "Player 1 wins!"
Player 1 wins!
Boy spends a lot of time reciting the same lines and saying some words with dictionary definitions while video game music plays in the background. And I would definitely say that the vast majority of this movie, like comedically, did not work for me at all. Like I didn't chuckle or anything. I thought it took me out of the movie tonally. And when I got to this movie, within the first 5 minutes or so, it was a movie I was expecting to love. It's right in my wheelhouse, over the top violent. It's supposed to be funny. It was everything I was asking for. But then by like minute 20 or so, I actually kind of wanted to hate this movie. Like something wasn't clicking for me. The humor was way off. It was just something rubbing me the wrong way. And I was like, tonally, this movie does not work at all for me. And I would be lying if I could pinpoint exactly when it was, but at some point during this movie, I flipped switch. And I'm not sure if that's because the movie was making me insane. Maybe I'm just losing my mind in general, but at some point I just decided to buy in. And from that point on, about 20 minutes in, I just said, fuck it, we're here. Let's do it. But there's seriously some scenes in this movie that don't totally make any sense at all. You have this scene where people are being cold in the streets, ran over, shot down, and some guy's just clapping his hands saying, "Everybody sing along and dance with me."
You know how hard it is to get a cereal company to sponsor mass murder?
So the entire movie is just composed of scenes like that, where it's like, you're supposed to be dead serious about the subject matter, but they're obviously making an over-the-top joke about it, which kind of makes it hard to buy into the world. And since our main character is named the Boy, they obviously double down on that, as he has an inner monologue played by the guy who voices Archer. If you're familiar with that show, you kind of know his comedic timing, how he sounds. You end up watching this guy going on an absolutely violent tear, wrecking everybody in his path to the inner monologue of like an 8-year-old's thoughts. And since so much of this movie is obviously about the fact that they're blending the tones of comedy with extremely violent action, there was like a couple shows and movies that instantly came to mind I would draw comparisons to. I thought this movie reminded me tonally a lot of the movie Kick-Ass, if you've ever seen that one. Maybe the show Happy, if you've ever seen that, about the guy on drugs who sees a flying unicorn. But I thought the perfect comparison when I was leaving would be the movie Hobo with a Shotgun mixed with the humor of SpongeBob, but not SpongeBob's humor entirely, Patrick Starr's mainly. So if you've seen any of those, let me know if you think that totally matches up in the comments down below. When you get to the action scenes of this movie, it feels like you're kind of dealing with hallucinogens, and not like the active uses. I mean like afterwards when your synapses have been completely fried from 20 years of use. Because holy shit, is this movie violent. I mean, this movie's so violent, it makes movies like Monkey Man and The Beekeeper look like PG-13 Nickelodeon shows. I mean, there was points in this where I thought this has to be damn close to NC-17 because the shit they're showing on screen, Yeesh. Because when you get to the violence in this movie, you see just about everything you'll ever see in a movie in this movie. You got graphic imagery of this guy raking a cheese grater across people's face and arms. You got another scene where a guy's blowing people's heads up with a whack-a-mole mallet. There's a scene where you see a guy get curb stomped. There's another scene where you see a guy's face get pulled apart by 2 crowbars by the mouth. I mean, I'm not one to wince at violence, but there's shit in this movie that makes Hostel look tame. When the story does keep trekking along, you know, our main character's on his little revenge tour, killing everybody in sight. There is a huge twist in this movie that I did not see coming at all. And honestly, it's a twist I probably would have hated if they didn't follow it up the way they did, but I think they did a really good job kind of following it up towards the end. And when you do progress past the twist of this movie, you get to the finale of the movie, the climax, the big fighting scene. It might be the most graphic fighting scene I've ever seen in a movie. So if you're queasy, look away. I mean, the things they have characters doing in this movie with razor blades and knives, cutting down people's arms and legs, some of the most graphic fight violence I've ever seen. As I said, I kind of don't know how this movie wasn't NC-17. Definitely some stuff that made me wince and want to bite my fist because holy shit. When you do get past the fight scene, you get to the true ending, some explanations given through flashbacks. I thought the ending was actually pretty heartfelt and profound, which kind of surprised me after all the violence. I definitely thought the ending of this movie was kind of emotional and touching, and I definitely didn't expect to get anything profound out of this movie after how it started. And I'll definitely double down and say I thought this movie had like some criminal negatives to it, like things that did not work, things I did not like at all, but I thought some of the positives were very, very good. I think in hindsight, up until this point, I think this is the most unique movie and easily the most unique viewing experience I've had in the theater so far this year. It took me a couple of days to do this review because I wanted to let it sit with me. I wasn't even sure if I liked it or not up until now, but I kind of had chills leaving the theater watching this. But as I sit here and I think about Boy Kills World, how it ages in my mind, I'm letting it simmer a bit, I kind of think it's a damn good time and I buy it. I don't know, maybe in a couple of days I won't even like this movie, but somehow in the end it won out that I really liked this movie. I don't know how, maybe I had to let it simmer for a few days. I don't know, there's just something about this movie that's aging so well in my head. The way that it went for some chances, some unique things I've never seen. I think it's a very memorable movie. And especially that this is by a first-time director. I am incredibly excited to see what projects this guy can pull out if he kind of hones it in a little bit because he's got some really good stuff going here. Now, I'll definitely say that the rating I give this movie is off the stipulation that part of the reason I would buy it is because this is one of those what the fuck movies you want to have in your repertoire and you go, oh, I got something to show you, buddy. Let me get this one out. So the next time the boys or somebody comes over and they need something to watch and you want something to blow their minds, bust this one out because I guarantee they've never seen something like this. So did you see this movie? What did you think of it? Were you as confused as I was? Comment down below, let me know. And if you haven't already, subscribe. What the hell are you waiting for? There's going to be more videos on new releases, more scary stuff, so click that down below. And that's all I got in this video, guys. Take care. Peace.